Welcome everybody to the Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board meeting. Today is January 17th, 2019. It is 7:02 p.m. and we are reconvening to our open session. No action was taken in closed session. So we will bring ourselves to item number 6, Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a guest star to lead the Pledge of Allegiance? Or a volunteer from the audience? Anybody? All right, well, it's a group effort then. We'll stand up and pledge. Right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So item number 7, adoption of the agenda as presented or amended. Do we have a motion to do so? So moved. Okay, second? Second. Okay. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Okay, passes 5-0. 5 plus 1, 0. Okay, student, staff, community recognition. None on the docket for this week, this month, sorry. Brings us to item number 9, comments from the public related to items not in this agenda. Seeing as there are none, very efficient tonight. Move to item number 10, representative reports. All right, we have Mr. Reardon here tonight. Hello, CUTA.
Well, good evening, President Lane, and welcome to Lizette Cortez for your first time behind the table over there. Board member, superintendent. My name is Sean Reardon. I'm the president of the Cabrillo Unified Teachers Association. It's a tough day to stand up here with our negotiation process opening in just 2 weeks. I know Crystal is going to stand up today and she's going to talk about the audit from the summer, and I know what it's going to say. The income is going one way, and expenditures are going the other way, and it's not in a good direction. There are dark clouds on the horizon, and if you look a little bit farther to the southland, the clouds of storm is really dark. 98% of the teachers who voted to strike. The same situation is happening in the East Bay right now. This is a failure, and it's a failure to compromise and to negotiate, to bargain, to brainstorm, to invent, and to bend. But it's not an invitation to break, right? These are words that are about possibility and promise and potential. But they all hinge on participation in the democratic process. And they hinge on voting locally to support education through bonds and through parcel taxes. They depend on voting statewide to repeal a broken corporate tax system. And of course, it depends voting nationally to save the whole planet. Erin Aubrey Kaplan wrote today in the New York Times op-ed page, saving education isn't about idealism, it's about survival. She goes on to assert that if it can happen anywhere, it can happen in California. Well, I ask you, can we, as a small district on the edge of the continent, who suffers under the yoke of Proposition 13, can we change education? Can we save it? I look forward to meeting at the negotiation table to get that important work done.
Thank you very much, Sean. Is CSCA, do we have a representative present? Hello.
Dear board members, and
Hang on.
thank you. Dear board members, administration, and superintendent. My name is Stig Lynn. I work in this school district now for about 10 years. I'm a lead computer technician and work with the technology we have here in our district. CSA had an election here in December. And I think we're talking about democracy. We had the biggest turnout we ever had in our union. We had over 50 or 60% of our members who came and voted. Let me see here. So I would just like to say the name here of the new elected board for CSEA Union. It's me, Stiglin, who's the president. It's Rosalba Segura, who is the vice president. It's Suzanne McCormick, who is the secretary, and Steve Goldberg, who is the treasury. And Steve is actually here today too. And CSA hope that we can continue to work with the district to create a safe and good work environment for staff and students. And that's all I had to say today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Okay. Brings us to item number 11, reports, information, and presentations. First up, 11A, receive the audit report for year ending June 30th, 2018. Crystal.
Yes, good evening. Tonight I do have Sheldon here to present the audit, and then I will ask for approval and we can have further discussion during and after his presentation, and then during the action time as well if there's additional questions for me. Okay.
You okay, Sheldon?
Should have brought my notebook. Little one like that big works out a lot better. Okay, June 30, 2018, audit results, and it's a history lesson, so we're looking backwards, and there's different things that happen, and when it comes to first interim budget, things look slightly different than what's going on in the audit, but you can see the trend, so we'll talk about it. But the big topic is really going to be, other than the audit results themselves, it's going to be pensions and other post-employment benefits, and so we're going to jump right on into it. First and foremost, the standards that we actually perform the audit under, and those standards include, of course, the statements on auditing standards from the AICPA, and then governmental auditing standards, otherwise known as GAGAS, and the Education Audit Appeals Panel Audit Guide. It's not a standard, but it's a guide we follow for the state compliance, state of California, and then the single audit, which is actually now called Uniform Guidance. And under uniform guidance, if you spend $750,000 or more in federal awards, you're subject to the uniform guidance compliance requirements. Why do we call it GAGAS? The yellow book? And that's why we call it the yellow book. It's actually yellow. It's not anymore. It's just in text. It'll actually send it to you. All right, pensions, jumping right in. Really what we're looking at, and the purpose of this slide, and this is an excerpt from the audit report itself. It's in the required supplementary information section, and the purpose of this is to kind of look at a comparison from 15 to 18, because this is what gives you the true picture of the changes that we have seen in pensions over the last 4 fiscal years. And if you're looking at 2015 column, the district's proportionate share of the net pension liability was $4.73 million in 2015 for CalPERS. That went up to $10.25 million in 2018 for CalPERS. Same net pension liability for CalSTRS was $16.36 million in 2015. That went up to $24.9, almost $25 million as of June 30, 2018. So you can see the trend in California for school districts and all other local governments is not good. It's a negative trend. These pensions are growing. Even though we see the annual required contributions, which have a huge impact on your fund statements, the annual required contributions are going up, and they will continue to go up. The pension liability itself in your government-wide financial statements is still rising. It's still increasing. It's going to continue to increase based on what we're seeing. One of the biggest reasons for this increase, what you'll find in the actuarial assumptions and the actual reports that are provided, are the discount rates. The discount rates as of June 30, 2015 were 7.65% for CalPERS. As of June 30, 2018, they were 7.15% for the discount rate. For CalSTRS, it was 7.6% in 2015. And fast forward to 2018, it was 7.1%. So the decrease in the discount rate has caused an increase in the net pension liability. And that's just one factor, but I think the most significant factor for the increase. Now keep in mind the audit report includes something you haven't seen before, well, that you don't normally see throughout the year. You have seen it before if you've looked at previous audit reports, and it's the government-wide statement of net position, Government-wide statement of activities, that's your consolidated funds. Add in the capital assets, add in the long-term debt, throw in some funny terminology called deferred outflows and some funny terminology called deferred inflows, and you end up with your net position. So we're going to touch on that net position real quickly in a second. On this page, you can see your actual contributions by year for both CalPERS and CalSTRS. So you can see the increase over the years from 2015 to 2018, $542,015 for CalPERS, $905,000 in 2018 for CalPERS. For CalSTRS, 2015 it was 1.19 million, 2018 2.158 million. So the contributions are increasing in relation to the increase in the net pension liability.
Sorry.
Let's see if I can back up. Nope, I got you. Right here. For STRS, the 2015 number was 1.192 million for 2015. And for 2018, it's 2.158 million.
I'm sorry, for PERS, it's that 542 versus 905.
Correct.
Okay, so almost double.
Correct.
Thanks.
All right, now as I mentioned, statement of net position, this is your government-wide balance sheet. All right, so in this balance sheet, you can see you have things such as capital assets, long-term liabilities, it's something you will not see in your general fund. Deferred outflows of resources, which they say is not an asset, but it acts like an asset. Deferred inflows of resources, which is not a liability, but it acts like a liability. So the thing that you'll take away from this statement is that one really good thing for this district, which is very unusual, is you actually have a positive net position, not a deficit. Very unique. Congratulations. What does it mean? Not a whole lot. To be honest, it just tells me as an audit firm that your capital assets, the way that you finance them, you've done a good job. And probably, it also probably tells me you need more capital assets, more modernization, more construction. It's interesting that a positive thing would tell me something else needs to be done, right? But that's what I see as an auditor. So the important thing to note here is very simple, though, is that you do have $96 million in long-term liabilities, and a lot of that is your net pension liability. Government-wide revenues, and if I didn't put a slide for other post-employment benefits, I'm going to go ahead and touch on that. Oh, you don't have other post-employment benefits. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. You're one of the very unique school districts that I audit that does not have other post-employment benefits. So you're not going to see anything related to that here, only the net pension liabilities. It just throws me off every time. I think I ask Crystal 10 times a year, are you sure you don't have other post-employment benefits? The first time I was told that by Diane Stupai years ago, I said, I'm going to have to check on that. I don't believe you. And then she just laughed at me when I said, yeah, you're right. All right, government-wide revenue. So the one thing to point out here is that your property taxes actually decreased from 17 to 18. Looks kind of funny. How does that happen? That's going to probably happen in the future as these mortgage rates go up, by the way. But it really kind of didn't happen. It's the funding model that these school districts have. So if you look at grants and entitlements, you notice that the grants went up. Grants and entitlements went up in 2018. So what you end up here is that whole education and revenue augmentation fund transfers and LCFF calculations. So sometimes when school districts are flipping between basic aid and revenue limit, you'll see these shifts between the LCFF grants and property taxes. And so that's what you're seeing here. Government-wide expenses. And this chart, really what it tells me is that your instruction is the largest by far of all your expenses. These numbers now, keep in mind, the term government-wide matters because these are adjusted for depreciation, they're adjusted for interest changes, accrued interest, they're adjusted for pension costs. It's not just cash payments, this is actual accrual basis reporting here. Versus modified accrual. We can talk about that in the workshop if you want. But the bottom line, instruction is by far the largest cost that you have. Interest and fiscal charges is the next one. And then plant services is a little bit of a fluctuation from year over year. That has to do with non-capitalized capital outlay. So what that means is they're or capital outlay in your fund statements that did not meet the criteria for a capital asset or in addition to capital assets in 17. Audit results. Now see, I kind of messed up because I didn't allow each bullet point to come in one by one. It's more dramatic that way when you don't have findings, right? So no exceptions in the audit opinions. What that really means is that we did not have any modifications, no qualifications. The first independent auditor's report, the very front of the audit reporting package, is the most important. That's the financial, that's basically the backbone saying that, hey, these financial statements are free from material misstatement. And if they're not, you'll see an exception in there that says qualified or adverse, and you won't see that in your district's opinion. No material weaknesses, no disagreements with management, yay, and no significant passed on adjustments. So sometimes you run into a situation where we'll find a reconciling item, and we'll go to management and say, hey, look, it's not material, but you should probably book it. And they'll go, no, we don't want to, for whatever reason. They usually have a good reason for it. In your case, there were no such items that we had to worry about. One last comment, and then you can ask me any questions you like. Here it is. Approved. So you passed the audit. So it's another year with no findings, so congratulations. Good job, Crystal. Good job to the sites, because we spend a lot of time testing attendance. We do a lot of work with ASB. It's a large process. We've got a lot of work that we have to do, and they don't give us a whole lot of time to do it in. So again, congratulations to the district not passing another audit. Any questions?
Give us a second.
Sure.
I have some, but I don't need to start if others do as well. I first just want to say thank you. This, I know I'm kind of a nerd, but this report is excellent just in terms of the rigor of it, and I know that's the goal. But to see as a board member the various tests that you put our budget and our financing procedures and processes and outputs under, I know it's required and we have to do it, but to me it's also just a huge reassurance to see the different ways that you're looking at it. So not only material findings, but whether management chose to address non-material findings, things like that. Like, again, I know it's required, but to me it adds a real kind of sense that we're good, we're on track, we don't have a lot of money, but we're managing it well and appropriately. So that's, I just want to say thank you for all the work that's involved with this. And I just want to make sure, again, and the pensions, I think is also, I appreciate that we went into that a little bit more depth, is I'm starting to learn to understand how they even work, especially with the importance that they're playing in the role of our budget moving forward. And the way I'm interpreting the two slides that you have, and I just want to make sure I'm interpreting correctly, our liability grew from about 21 million in 2015 to about 35 million 3 years later. So about 80% or so, plus or minus, increase in just 3 years. And for the contributions to how much we actually have to pay out of our $35 million budget went from 1.7 to 3 million. So almost 10% of our budget goes to pensions. That's pretty huge. Okay.
And just to piggyback off of that, when I present it first and second interim and we talk about, we look at the multi-year projections and we talk about those pensions, and I talk about them often as the unfunded mandate liability, right? That's usually because those percentages are determined at the state level and then passed down to the districts, but we're not giving any additional funding for these increases that have occurred over the past, several years. And the biggest bulk of them have occurred prior to this year that we're currently in. With the last 3 years is when we really see those percentages jump. And then as the next 3 out years, they actually are slowing down a little bit. But, those are just a percentage that's based off of what our salaries are. Okay. So it's a fairly easy calculation to do. And then now often you see, what is, when we have to do the big booking, the GASB,
68 net pension liability.
Yeah, so now we have to book the pension liability
Right.
because the state wants to see, like, if we were to cease doing business, like, today, if we
Right.
didn't exist, what that liability is for our district. So you
Right.
kind of see that booking, you see it come in and then you see it go out because it just nets, it's just there for an accounting trail. But just to kind of full circle that pension conversation, that these are those unfunded liabilities that I often talk about at
Yeah.
first and second interim.
That makes sense, and that way that dramatic increase from 2015 to 2018 has effectively, I guess, drawn from our reserves sufficiently that, although it's less dramatic of an increase moving forward, it's like you spent your cash, right? You spent your checkbook is now kind of less flush than it was before, which makes things tighter going forward.
Yeah, those contributions too in the past 3 or 4 years, we've been catching up from prior periods where those contributions weren't sufficient. So basically, current retirees are being paid for from current
Right.
employees, right?
So that's why it went up so much so fast.
Correct.
And just a very, very kind of top line summary of how the pensions work in terms of like, is there a rough percentage that for the PERS and for STIRS that employees get from their compensation when they were like last working, or how do the pensions work, just kind of in the 2-sentence summary?
So there's 2 different pensions. There's the PERS, which is the Public Employee Retirement System, which is your classified unit, and then there is your STIRS, which is your state teachers retirement. So for PERS, it depends if you're a classic member or if you're a new member. That just has to do with when you became a PERS member. So I am a classic member. So that is 2%, I think. So
2 to 2.5.
yeah, 2 to 2.5% of my highest year. Where I think new members are last 3
Just 2.
years or just 2%. So they definitely have adjusted to account for the unfunded liability portion of it. They can't continue at this same rate. And then they've also made some changes on the certificated side, and it's, what's different between the teacher side is the teachers are just, the STIRS is just the teachers. The PERS, which is classified, also houses other public employees, right? So that liability is far greater, and the way that those are distributed are differently. And I think as they looked at, I know you said quickly, I'm sorry, but as you look at where they made some errors previously with pensions, they're trying to correct those wrongs, right? And how this whole thing got to be such a large expense that the state can't afford. So I think they're trying to correct that, which is wonderful, except for they're doing it on the backs of especially school districts, and we just can't afford it.
Okay, so then, if you say 2% of the highest salary, I think there's a perception in the public, and that's what I interpreted from the tables too. And I was actually a little surprised because I hadn't seen that number. I hadn't noticed that number before. I'm sure it's been obviously in the audits in the past. But I feel like there's a perception in the public that pensions are these like fat, big, generous things. You're living large when you retire from a school district, and I feel like, wow, 2% is not a particularly large amount of money when we're talking about school district.
Yeah, no,
salaries.
And in there are some areas of state employment where the pensions can be inflated, and they've tried to correct some of those laws to, kind of move away from those. But no, I've yet to see somebody really benefit off of retiring from a school. That's usually why we have additional retirement. You have your 403Bs, which is similar to a 401k and so forth, to move with our pensions.
Thank you very much.
I got a question. I'm just curious from, talking about all this pension stuff, how does it compare with other school districts that you see? Are we in the same range?
It's a proportionate share of the pool. So you are, in the sense of your proportionate share. The liabilities are moving just like every other district. However, if I compare you're about in the middle from the actual liability, 35 million. You're about right in the middle. I have some districts that are 100 million, some districts that are 10 million. So.
Any other sides? Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That will move on to item 11B, receive report on school plan for student achievement for high school sites. Would Joy introduce you?
So I'm Irene Preciado, will be the Director of Categorical Programs, will be presenting with John Nazar for this report.
Ordinarily, you have Rajan Vijay, Raj is sick. He got the vote.
Right. Good evening, Madam President, board members. Welcome, Lisette. Excited to see you at in the leadership. Welcome and good evening to our dear Superintendent Euster, staff. And I'm really excited to be back with you today. Last month, we presented the school plans for student achievement for elementary schools. Today, I'm happy to bring to you the high schools, and next month we will be presenting our intermediate school. So as our Superintendent Euster indicated, Mr. Raj Bishar could not be here, so I'll be doing the presentation for him. But let me first do a brief review of what the school plan for student achievement is. You might remember it used to be called the Single Plan for Student Achievement. They approved the Senate Bill 716 last September, and it took place, or it became effective January 1st of this year. We decided to be proactive, and we adopted a new format at the beginning of the school year so that we will be ready. And so the School Plan for Student Achievement, also known by the acronym SIPSA, identifies and addresses the instructional needs of students and specifies how the categorical funds provided through the consolidated application will be used to accomplish the goals outlined in the plan. Everything is assigned with the intent and purpose of having the funds go to the students who have the greatest needs. The school plan is designed along the guidelines of the school board, and the school board adopts the local control accountability plan. We have identified 4 goals as a district. So the schools look at the 4 goals and they base those goals to create their own goals and identify their own specific needs. So our first goal focuses on academic skills so that the students are ready for college and career. And there's a particular emphasis on ensuring that our students who are identified as English learners achieve literacy and are ready to reclassify as fluent English proficient students. Our second goal focuses on students who are engaged in curriculum and also preparing them for college and career. Our third goal focuses on implementing communication with all of our stakeholders and improving or supporting our parental involvement. And our fourth goal focuses on positive school climate where the students feel safe and supported when they come to our schools. It is imperative that all of our schools involve all of the stakeholders, just like we do with our local control accountability plan. At the school side, we involved all the members. The most formal basis are the school side council that involves classified, certificated parents and students at the high school level. Intermediate schools have an option to include students. Elementary schools do not include students in their school side council. And we also have our English Learner Advisory Committee who focuses specifically on the needs of English learners, and they advise to the school side council on the approval of the plan. The staff also is involved in the process through the leadership team as well as the PTO and other organizations within the school. Part of the change with AB 716 is that now our school plan reflects the local control accountability plan, and it focuses on the California school dashboard. So there were some changes that were made, and now we're looking, our plan looks very similar to the local control accountability plan, and it also addresses the data on the California school dashboard, something that we did not used to do with our single plan for student achievement. So we look at English language arts, we look at math or mathematics, the progress of English learners, the absences, the graduation rate, specifically for our high schools, and the suspension rate and the college and career readiness for our high schools. In addition to that data, we also analyze the data for the district and the school, in particular our panorama survey, the attendance rate, school climate, and reclassification rate. everything revolves around a cycle of continuous improvement. Our school plans are a living document. They're not stagnant, they don't get shelved after you approve them. Rather, they are created, they continue to be part of our expenditures, our planning. We're always going back to review and reassess. We begin at the blue arrow, right where it says share results. That is the beginning. All of our school plans were revised this year, and they continue to go through revisions throughout the year, and then a final revision is done before we bring it to you. You have received every school's plan in their entirety. Today, we've asked the principals to do a really brief presentation, so they will have 2 highlight points of strategies to achieve the goals for each of those. So we have Mr. John Naser, who will be talking to you just some brief highlights of Half Moon Bay High School. So with great pleasure, I introduce Mr. John Naser.
Thank you, Irene. And I heard her say 3 times, John Nazar, and brief. That is one of my areas of weakness, but I think so. She knows me pretty well. Thank you for allowing me to come up and to speak with you tonight. I've always, since I've been the principal at Half Moon Bay High School, and I think many of you know that it was really, I always felt like a dream come true. It was a single job in my life that I wanted to do more than anything else. I love this community. I love our students, our families, the people I work with, and the people who care about our kids. And the kids themselves are amazing. I'd say the overall health of our school is excellent. This is not only mine, and I'm very biased, of course, but I think if we look at a lot of things, we are right now in the middle of a WASP, which is our accreditation period. And in 2 months, in mid-March, we're going to be having a team come visit us. And we've been working for 1.5 years, and that is every single person on that campus and community members are working on really looking at our school in great depth and with a very critical eye. What are we doing well? What do we need to improve? And how can we be the best servants of our students and our community? If you look at the dashboard, which Irene talked about, I think it's extremely positive. We're in the blue and green in every area other than college and career. And we think we've identified the reason why, and those corrections will be made. Mainly, I think it's around not having capstone classes for our CTE programs. That's one of our things. So, looking at our first goal, and there's obviously, we put a lot of pieces into this, but goal number 1 is what we're going to try to do is increase our UC CSU eligibility and really focus on the reclassification of our students, which has been incredible. The 10%, I think we're about 48% this past year. One of the things that has worked really well for us, that which we're going to continue with, is we have in each department Common Core specialists. Each department has a member that we meet. We talk about how are we implementing those Common Core standards. How can we broaden that exposure so our kids are getting some very powerful educational pieces. And I know some people say, well, Common Core standards, and there's some, talk about, a lot of times connected to testing. But if you look at the standards, there are a very good set of educational goals for young people. Example, like in physical education. When you go into physical education, they're not just playing PE. They're doing specific tasks, writing, thinking, discussing, talking, challenging each other, not just physically, but also intellectually, which is aligned with the common standards. So when we look at this first goal, I know there was, I think, some questions, like we've added an advisory class. What does advisory do? Advisory now is we have 1 hour a week that is unique for students to catch up on any kind of lessons that they haven't maybe missed. we have a stack between, let's say there's 10 seniors, 10 sophomores in that class, or 10 juniors, 10 freshmen. The older kids can mentor the younger ones, as well as, of course, we do a number of activities. Like, for example, I have my own advisory this year, and I run my kindness campaign out of that. We meet weekly, and we're focused, and we have really a pretty well-developed program, and it's really exciting. But this is also, supporting our students to make up, talk with teachers, so I could really spend time to make sure I could get really the understanding that I need. The A through G is one of our challenges, and that we would love to see all of our students A through G eligible. And one of the things is our messaging, and we do this consistently in light of, because I think we see some kids thinking, well, CSM and junior college is a very viable way to go, and it is. And they're making it free for the first year, talking about possibly, and we have a great connection with them, but we're still need to emphasize, we want every one of our kids to be A through G eligible, and then they can make that decision. Oh yeah, I'm the one doing this. I was waiting for someone to move it. Goal number 2 is around supporting our students in a number of areas. And we've already accomplished one of our critical goals for this year, and that is access to technology. With the support of our school board and, of course, our superintendent, Euster, every single one of our students is given a Chromebook. That Chromebook, they have all access to the Google Suites. Much of the work in technology now is in the hands of every single student. Those students, let's say, don't have a good Wi-Fi connection at home, we issue hotspots at our school so they all can access homework, curriculum, and other information. Anecdotally, students have talked to me, they love this. And we're very fortunate, they've taken really good care of them. And they should, because when they graduate, they get to keep it. The second part of this is the support of our AVID program, and that we have dedicated a significant amount of our Title I money to giving those extra opportunities. In a few weeks, we're going to have a group of sophomores and juniors take a 4-day trip in Southern California over the February week. Down to 9 colleges in Southern California to be exposed to universities, both private and public, CSUs, UCs, and have a great experience so that they basically are growing up with, I am going to college, I just got to determine which one fits my needs. Goal 3, integrated system of communication. This has always been a challenge, and I think we've worked very diligently at the high school. I think in the big picture we've done a good job, but in communicating when we've had potential emergency situations, it's taken an incredible amount of person power to do it. In fact, I've even had at one time 2 assistant principals, myself, and our superintendent all sitting down. We're communicating in different ways so we could get that information out quickly. Now, if there's an immediate situation where I need to be, dealing with something, that's going to be a lot tougher. So we are working with our district. I think we have identified a communication system, and part of our job is once it's implemented that we'll all be trained in it so we can use it effectively and obviously quickly in emergencies. And finally, the one about the social emotional well-being of our students. This is something that we have valued. Our overall theme of our school is kindness, and with that it is about feeling well and supportive of one another. Probably the greatest thing that we have had that has connected with that is our Health and Wellness Committee. 4 years ago, we formed it based on some identified needs in our community. They said, when I came to the school, we had classes starting at 6:40 in the morning, and people said, is that really a great time for students to learn? Is that their optimal learning time? And so we've put together a large group of people that from the community and students and parents and administration and counselors. And after a little research, we recognized probably 6:40 is not the best time for a student to learn. That with working with our incredible teachers, and I tell you, I'm very privileged to work with that staff at the high school. We have an amazing group of teachers. And we decided we're going to push the time back that first year. The second year, we started really looking at how can we best educate our kids. And we moved from a straight schedule to a block schedule, which allows kids to go more in depth, our teachers to teach more deeply, reduce some of their homework because they're not just rushing through class to class to class, and will eventually evolve into more project-based learning, design thinking. There's so many incredible opportunities that we have now put in place. Health and wellness was one of the major drivers of this. Last year, we focused on social wellness and emotional wellness, and we've added quite a bit of counseling. So when kids are coming in and they are dealing with issues, we can refer them directly to services to support them. And currently, we're working on some critical issues, and all of us are concerned with vaping. And so we have subcommittees. Our overall committee is focused on vaping because that's the biggest one, but we have subcommittees on nutrition, on drugs, alcohol, kindness, and developing other things for young people to do in our community. So it's an ad hoc. I invite any one of you and all of you to attend. And we're also hoping to expand it because what we've seen at the high school, I think, could be a model for what would work throughout the rest of our school community. So with that, I thank you for allowing me to speak to you, and I appreciate it.
All right, so I'll be brief. I am very, very happy to have the opportunity to talk about Pilarcitos. I know that I will not do half as good of a job as Rush could have, but I am very privileged indeed to have the opportunity to work with all of our schools, all of their staff, incredibly dedicated at all of our schools. At Pilarcitos, they have identified their four highlights, or the four goals for their 4 goals and highlights. Their first one is to increase the English learner graduation rate by 5%. In review of the data they identified, they had a graduation rate that needed to increase for English learners, so they have indicated a 5% increase in maintaining at least a 75% graduation rate for English-only students. In order to achieve this goal, 2 of the highlight strategies are 1, to research designated ELD curriculum options and decide on a curriculum to pilot. We have identified the curriculum and we will begin piloting in the next few weeks. They also have dedicated the last 2.5 years. I've worked with the teachers specifically on designated and integrated ELD. So we work for 9 hours during the year. We identify strategies. We take a holistic approach to teaching our English learners. So we look at their social emotional needs. We look at the supports in the classroom with strategies. We look at how we can differentiate our assessment and our product base so that they can demonstrate that they have mastered the concept without necessarily having to only focus on the language, but giving them the structures of the language so that they can be successful in other areas as well. Our second goal at Pilarcitos is to develop student awareness of and increase exposure to career opportunities and college readiness as measured by the Panorama Survey. They have scheduled 4 college nights, or college trips rather. They will be going to all of our local community colleges. They are focusing on giving them information and practice on entrance requirements, orientation, registration, and admission. So it isn't a mystery, but it is actually hands-on. They get to visit the schools and they get to fully understand how they can access college. They also have scheduled 4 guest speakers, 3 that have been identified and 1 that is in the process of being identified. All of these guests are identified by the needs and the interests of the students. So they're not at random, but rather defined by the students themselves through surveys, both formal and informal. Their goal on parent attendance and parent participation is to increase the number of parents and their attendance at different events. And they're going to measure the impact of their strategies by doing the following. They're going to create a family support group where the families, schools, and district staff meet 3 times a year. They've already held their first meeting. They're also going to review and select and implement a panorama parent survey strategy. The panorama surveys give you strategies for each of the sections, and they help you identify strategies that will help you increase the parent involvement or whatever area that the panorama survey analyzes. So they're looking at either topics of barriers to engagement and or family engagement. So the staff will be entertaining those options. And their fourth goal is to support safety in a positive school climate, as measured by the Panorama Student Survey. 2 of the strategies that they wanted to highlight, one is positive behavioral interventions and supports, having a consultant come in, meet with the staff, meet with the students, and be very strategic as to the implementation. Also, they have scheduled 2 professional development sessions that will be dedicated specifically to restorative justice, allowing students an opportunity to understand different ways of approaching difficult situations, reflecting, and then taking a different approach and next steps. So we want to thank you on behalf of Mr. Raj and his staff and parents and community. And at this time, we'd like to open for any questions, either for myself, for Pilarcitos, and for John.
Thank you for all the presentations. Having read in the board packet, I'm going to pick on you, John. I looked at the elective courses, and I'm assuming that's being offered for next year. Is drama still being offered?
Yes.
Okay.
That's brief. No, yes, but just
wasn't
as a
listed.
caveat though is, it all depends on student demand. So we offer all these courses, and as long as we have enrollment, the number of students, we will run it because we want it.
Right, I just didn't see it listed.
Oh.
So you might double check on it. It was on page 6 and 7.
I've got a Pilarcitos question. You said they're piloting new ELD curriculum. What have they currently been using, or do they have a current?
We have not adopted a curriculum for them, so they've been using the different curriculum, but nothing that is identified as a adopted curriculum. So that's the process that we're working on.
Okay, just formalizing.
Formalizing, yes, the process.
I just want to make a comment for the record. I could probably listen to John or any of the principals speak for hours about your schools, so thank you for trying to keep it brief, but we could always, it's just a pleasure to hear about the many different offerings and approaches and strategies, and the way that you think about how you're doing things at our school, even as you speak about the A to G requirements and having the reality of not all students will want to go down that path ultimately, but thinking about the strategy of helping kids keep their doors open as long as they can, that's critically important. I remember that I had a family member that gave me that advice as a kid, and it stuck with me throughout, because you just keep your doors open and you have options, right? Throughout your life and your career, you go to community college, you have a family, and then one day you want to go back. Okay, great. They have that, back in their back pocket. Those doors are open. So I just want to say, thank you for that, and your transparency, speaking not only about the good, but some of the challenges, right? And that positive mindset that you exude, and our principals in general, I would say, exude this too, of there are things that are going well, and Jane's wonderful at this as well too, right? There are things that are going well, things that are challenges, but we will do it. We'll work together, we'll see it through. It won't be easy. It'll be hard, but we're gonna figure it out. We may try some things and adjust and learn and kind of measure what's going well. Okay, keep going with that, or adapt it for scaling up or whatever. So having that insight into your kind of strategic thinking is also really informative, and really great to see that despite the resource challenge that we have teams and leaders that can think that way, is reassuring to say the least. So thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Question?
I'll just pass this one, please.
I have a question and I also have a complaint. I'd like to complain why it took you, 50 years to do this? Since it wasn't offered, all these great options weren't offered when I was up at the high school. But no, thank you for the presentation. I also had the same question as Mary Beth about the ELD curriculum. Is there a current ELD curriculum at the high school?
We are using H as one of them, but it's not the only one. They had 3 curriculum that we looked at, but again, we're going through a formal process to actually go through a process where we identified at least 2 curriculum where they see the strengths and the needs of each of the curriculum, where are the gaps, looking at how they address the Common Core standards, how they address the ELD standards, and also how feasible they are for accessing language, both for the student and the teacher. So they're looking at the teaching strategies, the learning and teaching strategies that the curriculum utilizes. They will evaluate the curriculum and then make a recommendation that we will be bringing to you.
Okay, but my question is there a curriculum up at the high school?
Not officially, there is, but not officially adopted.
And so is that also going to be, is there going to be an ELD curriculum that's going to be piloted up at the high school, or is this only for Pilarcitos?
Thank you. Yes, for the high school, both Pilarcitos and Half Moon Bay High School, and we're also doing a pilot study for Cunha Intermediate.
Okay.
So one thing I think, additional comment, is that the educational standards changed a number of years ago, not a number of years ago. A few years ago, we went to the Common Core, and the ELD, this whole standards changed for the teaching of English language development. And the state has a tendency to do this. So they change the standards, but they don't change the textbooks. So we've had to wait a long time for the state to put out the newly adopted textbooks. So we have the old curricular adoptions that we've been using before this change, but we've been waiting, not so patiently, but waiting for the state to catch up and for the textbook manufacturers and publishers to put out curriculum that now meets the new standards. So if it feels like, why aren't you waiting so long? And yes, we have curriculum in both areas. It's the old curriculum. So now finally, we have choices for the new, and we can do the adoption process. So we're hurrying as fast as we can in order to make sure, so we're going through process, but why is it taking, why are we holding at this point? It isn't that we don't have it, it's the old curriculum, and it's off the different standards than we have now.
And I don't know if this, I'm just going to ask, how are these goals measured? Because in the beginning they were 4 goals, and if I'm not mistaken, those were for the district in general. And these were your specific goals when you each made your own presentation, correct?
Yes, if you notice on each of the goals, you have both the goal itself and then how it's going to be measured. So let me go as an example. Let me take the last goal here. So for Pilarcitos, they're going to focus on supporting safety in a positive school climate, and they're going to measure by the Panorama Student Survey, specifically on whether they feel safe. So every area that within the Panorama Student Survey, the students will be able to report that. We will analyze the results and then measure that. So within the plan, you have specific metrics or measurements for each of the goals.
I missed the one for the high school.
Okay.
Is that also through the panoramic survey? Okay.
Different schools select different metrics. So can you go back to the high school, if just any one of the goals? Okay, got it. Here we go. So,
There, you just had it, there.
okay. So here we are, for goal 1, the English learner graduation rate. I'm sorry, I went back to Pilarcitos, my bad. Okay. Okay, so this is a good example. So on goal 1, you have by June 2019 increased the overall academic success of all students, and this is how will we measure. 1, by UC CSU eligibility. 2nd, the ELA proficiency rates, and this will be through the remember, the SBAC, the CASP, the state assessment for English language arts, English language arts, and then the proficiency, the English learner reclassification rate. And this will be measured, we do an annual report to the state that tells us the percentage. So again, every school determines their goals and their measures for each of the goals. But you will find in the actual plan the specifics, what the percent of expected increase will be and how it will be measured.
Thank you. Also, so if you look at the local control accountability plan for the district, there are 4 large goals there, and how we'll measure every last one of them is there. And so these reflect what's in our local control accountability plan, which is why they're not quite as detailed in the slides that they're doing. But go back to the district local control accountability plan, and you'll see the metric we're going to use to measure every single one of these. And that's not just at the district level, that's every single site measures under the same metric.
For the people putting all of these plans together, knowing that you're also doing LCAP, does it feel like there is value added in separate plans, or does it feel a little bit redundant?
It is a requirement. And again, the LCAP or the local control accountability plan drives the school plans. Joy, did you want to add?
So the local control accountability plan is using other funding. So the local control accountability plan is actually based on state funding. The funds that are used in the school site plans are federal funding. And so these are different funds, different amounts of money. The state funding sits above the general fund. So you have your general fund monies. On top of that, then you have your state funds. And then on top of that, you have your federal funds. So that's why, if you think of it either as flowing into or out of or above, it builds on each other. So the monies that are being discussed here at the site level supplement the monies that are given at the district level, which supplement the larger monies that are used for all students. And so I think that one of the reasons why it's so important for sites to be able to have these types of choices is that each site has specific needs that we can't address necessarily at a district level. And so this allows for that local governance of the school site councils to look at the data at a site-based level, to really analyze what their needs are, and be able to use those funds to address those site-based needs.
However, one of the things that everyone's appealing now is you have the production of the local control accountability plan, you have the production of the SIPSAs, you have the production of what's known as the SARC, and yes, there's some redundancy going on here. Particularly since we've been told that the local control accountability plan, this year, the new template is asking for even more discussion of our expenditures. So truly, if we're going to do all that, one would hope they'd start dropping some of these things that are handled, but it is the government, and it's federal and state governments, so there's a little bureaucracy that adds here. Is it value, is the data? Of course, we're data-driven in the district, but I mean, I'm a little less politically correct by saying, yes, there's a little redundancy here.
And the concern is not just that it's redundant, but the extra time it takes to prepare all of these. I just want the public to be aware of what the government requires. And what was it, Crystal, 4% of the budget? So this report, and all of the planning is obviously very useful for the sites, but that's to cover 4% of our budget.
Translate to the total is about, like, what, 50,000 per school, plus or minus? Not even 10, 20, 30?
50 is in the high end with the largest population. It's a per student allocation.
10 to 50.
Yes, yeah. It is a small amount of money. However, like Superintendent Euster indicated, the analysis of the data, the opportunity for all staff members to participate, to really look closely at the needs of the students with greatest need. And even though the funds are very little, the staff and the community, they're really wise as to maximize those resources. So it is a time-consuming effort. This plan is even larger than the last one. This new plan included a new section. So now each of the plans is about 57 pages. Before it was about 65, thank you. Yeah, before it was about 30. So it definitely has become more extensive, but it is a worthwhile effort. Yes, we could use additional funding.
Just real quick, a comment. Thank you, both of you, for presenting this. It's always great to get a little snapshot of different things that are happening at the school sites. And just on, John, some of the things that you talked about in terms of building and coming up with, I'd love to in the future hear more about the capstone courses for the CTE and also your project-based learning and design thinking in terms of the direction that you're moving in. It's very exciting. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, John.
Any additional questions? Again, thank you for the opportunity for us to present, and we'll see you again next month with Cunha Intermediate.
I just want to, Trustee Cortez, I want to thank you for that kind comment. And I want all of you to know I'm a very proud person standing up here. A number of years ago, she was in my American Government and Economics class, and a brilliant student. Really, I mean, I'm going to tell you, brought a lot to the class and very thoughtful, and I am just so impressed that, you know, when I have Raj Betcher, a former student, as a principal, and Lizette as our school board member, and, you know, really my boss, it warms my heart, and thank you for that kind comment.
All right, thank you very much, guys. All right, brings us to item 12, discussion items. On the agenda this month, there are none, so we will go to item 13, communications. So we'll start with board members, we'll go to student board member, and the superintendent. So I will start from the right with Freya.
I don't have much to say, just Happy New Year, everyone. Hope everyone had a great holiday. Looking forward to the year. And I didn't make it to school sites in the fall. I didn't want to confuse my twice-a-year visit to school sites with my campaign. And so I will be doing a spring visit. So look for emails from me for the principals and for school, sitting in the teacher staff and having lunch. I always enjoy those, so I'll be doing those soon. And that's all.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you for, I'm new to this, so this is like, oh, what did I get myself into? But I would like to, I consider myself a very active parent, and so I you know, school site council, I'm ELAC, and I was president of DLAC, but I haven't really been involved in the other schools. Not that I don't know where they are, but since I don't have children there, and you know, who needs to sleep, right? So I'd like to reach out and email the different schools and hopefully go out and visit. And I will be reaching out to you, Mr. Nazar. Because I can't call you John, I'm sorry. I will be reaching out to you, Mr. Nazar, and help with the event of Say Yes to the Dress, which somebody from the community came, and they would really like more reach out more to the Latino community, which I'm more than willing to help, but I'd like to touch bases with you as well. And yeah, thank you. Oh, and I also like to say hi to my other teacher, Mr. Andrews. I didn't forget your name, I'm just nervous. I am a product of this district, so it's a pleasure for me to be sitting here as a board member, now as a grown-up. Thank you.
Just say it's exciting to have everybody here together on our new board, and I'm really looking forward to our retreat on Saturday. I think it's a great opportunity to take a long extended period of time to get together, get to know each other a bit better than we already do. take a look at the big picture of how we work together, reminding ourselves about what's important and why we're here. I think those are really meaningful conversations that in the hustle and bustle of business, and ongoing business, is sometimes hard to carve out time to do, and family life and all these things, but really important that we do take this opportunity as a new team to do that, and I'm really excited to be able to do that. With knowing we do have a common goal throughout the district of doing, helping kids' dreams come true, right? So how do we work together to make sure we do our best to make that happen despite all the challenges that exist out there in the world. Yeah, around on the sites, I'm attached a lot. Lucky David, Mr. Porcel has 3 of us. I'm already around a lot, the lucky winner this round. But I just think about how much in big ways and small ways, like I just have seen through even just being, supporting Lynn Carlton at the library or coming in to do Art in Action, and just talking with people around on campus, how everything from how the librarians choose the books that they read and how they manage the kids when they're having interpersonal challenges, choosing books or kind of, bumping against each other, and to the dedication of teachers to make time for art, right, when they do have a lot of other kind of requirements to do, and just that dedication and the ability for people to work together and figure out how to get past those challenges to have that positive impact on kids. I was fortunate to be able to attend with Mr. Andrews the Soul Shop workshop at Cunha this week, and it was awesome. I'd heard about this program, but just I feel like that 1 hour, and he was probably gonna laugh, but I said at the meeting, if every parent could go to 1 hour workshop like that a year, the world would just be a happier place, right? Because it's just that intensive training of reminding ourselves as parents and adult and grown-ups, right? If we're gonna support our kids to have their dreams, we've got to show up for them calm as we can, right? Listening, showing them we care, and that sounds kind of fluffy and whatever in a world that has a lot of hard numbers and operations that we need to deal with, but that's the meat of it, right? So when we work with kids, how do we show up for them? Because that's going to set the tone and the model for how they show up for us and for themselves, number one, and for each other. So I say appreciate that, to have that opportunity to kind of see how our kids are being supported in their social emotional development at our different schools is just fantastic. Because what we're doing it's hard and it's messy, and just takes a lot of working together. And I want to just thank Jane for 2 excellent presentations this week to our community on the state of the district, including little highlights, flavor of the financial situation and how we've gotten here and where we hope to go with their support. I think, again, to be able to communicate with our community about who we are and what we do. For most people have it's like the iceberg. They probably see the very tip of the iceberg, have no idea, especially for younger parents, for the most part, very little understanding of what's going on at the high school, the multiple paths, for example. So for our community to be able to see that whole big picture is really important, and I think every time that you've presented that publicly, I feel like people are, it's always I could feel that sense in the audience of, wow, I had no idea. I had no idea we're doing this much. I had no idea California, we're on TV, so I'll use polite words, does not rank highly, as we would like to be in school funding, and really doesn't make the investment we ought to make in terms of the future of our people. So I want to just thank you, and I'm really grateful for your leadership to represent us as well as you do, and share that vision that we have around doing even more than we're doing already today. So yeah, so I want to just say thank you for all that, and I will pass it to my left. Kimberly.
Well, I'm furloughed, and so I've been busy this week. I enjoyed going to the talk Tuesday night. The Superintendent Euster shared the state of the district and explained financing. There were good questions in the audience. And it was a good reminder also to reflect on what we were talking about in terms of budget 2 years ago. We know that there are unfunded mandates. And as I listen to the questions, I can't help but think that in educating our community on what the funding is, maybe we can grow a larger base to ask more concrete questions. Knowing that other states do have mechanisms to fund school districts based on the cost of living in their county. We are in the most expensive county in our state. And so being in one of the highest cost of living areas and having funding where it is right now, I'm trying to think of how we as a group might be more creative in mobilizing the communications around funding. I think that's going to be an important thing to think about this year. I had the pleasure of going to the high school and to El Granada School today, walking into a number of classrooms. So a second grade ELD working, Mr. Farnsworth working with the kids, and then a third year Spanish class, which it was such a delight watching the kids, like, oh, really intent, looking at the slides going through. And then part of the conversation came up, and it's Star Wars, and you could see them laughing at the humor and the lesson, and then like dissecting all of the parts of speech in Spanish. And anyways, it was a delight. I saw the AP Bio class working on a DNA sequencing experiment where they're using the equipment, and they start with doing cheek swabs on Monday, and here they are on Thursday. I didn't see what their final results were, but just fascinating for them to do their ancestry DNA sequencing through the mother's line. Gosh, it was just really a pleasure. We were able to, didn't hear any of the music, but was able to follow up with Mr. Nazar and thank Mr. Anderson for his presentation last month. We were able to actually follow up with a couple of questions in terms of long-term stability, and so I know that that's something we need to talk about with the district office. So just all in all, wonderful, and I'm reaching out to the other principals, so you'll hear from me so I can get around to all the schools in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
I just want to say how excited I am for this new year. There's a lot of exciting things going on, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. And I just also wanted to thank everyone for being so kind and answering, the millions of questions that come out of new people. And I'm not done yet, so I'll have many more, I'm sorry to say. So anyway, I'm just really excited, and I'm really optimistic about what's going on and all the new stuff, all this stuff happening in the construction and all that stuff. So thank you for the warm welcome, and excited to be a part of it.
We'll go to our student board member.
I just wanted to start off by saying Happy New Year and welcome to the new faces sitting at this table. I'm very excited to be working with you all. All right, we'll get right into it. Half of Bay High School welcome back our students and staff from our long and pleasant winter break. Since our last board meeting, we have had numerous events around our campus. Our art department displayed their impressive portfolios during their open art studio show. Our leadership class is preparing for our winter formal on February 2nd from 7 to 10 p.m. Recently, our school has implemented phone caddies in every classroom, which students are expected to place their phones in before each class period to help our students focus on their education in the classroom. Our winter sports teams are playing phenomenally and will be continuing until mid-February. The spring musical Mamma Mia has started their rehearsals and are prepping for their performances in late March. Cunha Intermediate School has been very busy this month. Last night, our 8th graders showcased their science fair projects that they have been working hard on. Leadership has been organizing the annual lip sync battles for each grade level. The students that performed are having a blast, along with the students watching from the audience. In sports news, our 6th grade basketball season is starting soon. The 8th grade boys basketball team is going to the Tahoe tournament, and the 8th grade girls basketball team will be competing in the Napa tournament. This semester, we are welcoming new teachers and faculty to our wonderful school. Here's the update for Hatch. Jogathon was a huge success. Students, parents, teachers, and community members were able to participate in one of the biggest fundraisers for our school. Firefighters attended both rounds for lower and upper grades. They dedicated the first lap to the victims and families affected by the devastating fires that happened in California. A huge thank you to our PTO, SIPA, and ELAC parents for their support, effort, and countless hours dedicated to putting this event together. Coffee with the Principal was held last month. It was very well attended. Parents received updates about school curriculum and online reading programs. Also, Hatch administration shared with parent valuable information about how to prevent cyberbullying. The attendees received pamphlets and a magnet on information about the prevention of this type of bullying. Hatch Opera took place at the MPR. Students had the opportunity to perform twice, one for upper grades and one for lower grades. It was a great success. We would like to thank Mrs. Stewart, Mrs. Meyer, and Mrs. Wallace for getting the students ready and their time at the rehearsals. Kings Mountain School has had a busy start to the new year. This morning, students participated in the Scripps Spelling Bee. 4 champions from each class square off to compete as a top speller and move on to the 2019 Scripps National Spelling Bee Regional Competition. On January 24th, Kings Mountain Literacy Morning, a family engagement event to build the partnership between home and school to support reading. Families will join students for mini workshops led by teachers who will share home activities in word study, comprehension, and writing about reading. On January 30th, Kings Mountain has a school-wide Vision Impairment Day as part of Changing Perspective Curriculum, Disabilities, and Empathy program. A former mobility instructor from the Fremont School for the Blind will create learning simulations with students on how people with visually impairments navigate daily tasks to gain a better understanding of the experience of those with visual impairments. Having finished culinary arts instruction for the first trimester, Kings Mountain students were excited to begin music instruction with this week for their second trimester. Next month, Kings Mountain continues partnering with the Bay Area Puma Project. Algranada has rescheduled their fun run to tomorrow, rain or shine. They're looking forward to having a lot of healthy fun while raising money for music and physical education. Next Friday night, January 25th, our upper grade after school program, the Dolphin Club, will be hosting a family night. There will be a potluck dinner and fun winter activities for all our Dolphin Club families. Then on Friday, February 1st, we will have our first bubble dance party to celebrate all our students who did not receive a referral for the month of January. For students who did receive a referral, they will do a fun project with Miss Owens and learn about how to swim, be safe, work hard, be inclusive, and make good choices to our next bubble dance party at the end of February. Thank you.
Jane?
So just a quick comment on what you just heard about the bubble party. For positive behavior interventions and supports, you hear there's the positive reward. So if you don't have a referral and everything, you get to come to this great bubble party. But what I love about PBIS is for those who didn't quite make it, you still get to do something fun. So but it's not the bubble party. So it gives you a reward and then puts the next one out in front as well. So the kids stay very positive and also discussed quickly before they do the secondary work is how we could have made a better choice in the matter. So it really is supportive and not punitive whatsoever. So it's what I adore about PBIS is that the essence of what was said. So as you've heard, I've been a little busy out talking with the community, which is one of my favorite things to do. Enjoyed speaking with the American Association of University Women. And I was, anecdotally, I was talking to John, so I went in and looked at our registration in all of our advanced placement courses at the high school, and I split it out by demography, so male and female in the area. And the demography of Half Moon Bay High School were about 51% male and 49% female, which surprised me on how almost 50-50 we are. And then we looked at the advanced placement enrollments, and if you look at advanced placement overall, we have about 651 slots, not kids, slots, because some kids take 2 courses. But of those spots, 52% are filled by female and 49 by male. So our female very well represented. And then I got concerned, as you know, I like data. And I said, well, wait a minute, wait. The argument is, of course, that the females are all taking English language arts, and they're not taking the hard sciences, and they're not taking calculus. So I pulled the calculus, and in the calculus, 51% are male and 49% are female. So we've closed that gap really tight. And, you know, that's kids making it through Amy Trainer, so that's pretty rigorous. And then I went and looked at the hard sciences, because you have a scientist in front of you, and I'm dying to, you know, come on, girls, let's go. So we looked at AP Environmental Sciences, and AP Biology and AP Physics, and that's this year's enrollment. And there, it is 55% female and 45% male. So I was laughing with Mr. Nazar and saying, you know, I think maybe we might have to worry about the boys and not the girls. So women very, very well represented, very proud of what our women are becoming and how strong and powerful that they are, and great data. So that was fun to share with AAUW. And then at Brews and Views last night, a discussion about budget, each time a discussion about budget and the challenges that the district is facing, and a quick 2-second lesson in how California schools are funded. And that's where people just kind of lose their minds, because they don't really realize. And so we will be producing very rapidly now one is a document that summarizes funding and its impact right here at home, and asks for people to please write their legislators and contact them. We are a member of the Coalition for Full and Fair Funding for California, this district. You all, supported that resolution. And so we're asking as a part of the coalition that our population do it. We got very enthusiastic responses, people saying, great, give me the letter, I'll send it. And then we also have created a presentation that talks about just basic school finance 101. And so we're finishing that up, and I'm getting ready to make a sort of podcast recording of that, and then we're going to put that out to the community. And also spoke with Brews and Views last night, late after the presentation, and offered to come back and do school financing, because it did get such a strong response. And they said, that's a great idea. So I don't know when it will be, but we will be definitely going back to talk about finance, because people were really stunned at just how bad it's gotten. So very exciting. We also have been very, very hard at work on our new communications system. I'm pleased to tell you we are still on schedule, and we are still scheduled to be complete with all of it by the end of this school year. So the very first will be the emergency communication, and that is on schedule to happen late March, early April. So we're moving along with our infrastructure, and we're very excited to be moving along with the infrastructure. We're also working on our school-wide safety plans. You will have those in front of you in a little bit of an edited form, because there's certain data that can't be public, like where we're taking our kids in an emergency. But you will see the brand new plans. They are very, very comprehensive. And our congratulations to all of our sites who have made a great effort on this. We also have entire new training manuals on how to handle emergency incidents and clear designation of the roles. And our consultant has been working with schools. Rosie and I got the new binders, and it has so for every single school, he's created a binder. You have a tag on that says your role within the emergency, what your duties and responsibilities are. It's really incredible. It's amazing to see it. So very, very excited. Great to move forward in that area. So, and then I'm due to go out and see some more of our schools. I was able to get out to the schools, and I always enjoy my time in classrooms and going through the schools.
Very good, thank you, Jane. Okay, brings us to item 14, consent items. Do we have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Okay, second? Anyone? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. It passes 5 plus 1, 0. All right, item 15, action items. 15A, approve the school plan for student achievement for high school sites. Joy? Okay.
So thank you. We are bringing to you, as presented in the report earlier, the 2 high school sites to be approved formally in the action items section.
Good. We have a motion to approve. Okay, second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 5 plus 1 to 0. So item 15B, approve the audit report for year ending June 30th, 2018. Crystal?
Yes, as presented earlier, I also would like to give you kind of a little bit of a background on how long the actual audit takes and how many different departments are actually involved. So it's in total, it's about a 3-month process. We start pulling the documents that they give us this long. It's probably like a 5-page list of all of the stuff that they want ahead of time before they actually come out for the visit. They do end up spending about a full week here, and they camp out in the business office. And during that time, they do visit sites to look at attendance, and then also ASB. So they are looking at other departments and other school sites that aren't directly under me, but some of their operations and their business practices do roll in under me. So there's a lot of opportunity for them to work independently as far as the school sites go, and just the amount of detail that they keep in their records, and the fact that we don't have any findings on the school site side is just, it's really remarkable, because they don't always have all of the support and access to all the resources that maybe my staff might have. And then within the actual district office, the auditors also look at personnel, and they look at the personnel files and make sure that we are hiring and keeping records correctly, and then how those records are transferred over to payroll and how we're paying employees. So outside of just the revenues and expenditures and making sure that the actual accounting transactions were booked correctly, they are looking at the complete operations of the district, which all fall in that huge manual that they give. So as, sometimes this is kind of a standard, audit talk and audit presentation, and although I'm smiling when he's talking, it's kind of like death stares from everyone else. But, the fact that we actually have no exceptions and no findings is a huge achievement. So I definitely want to thank all of the different departments that were involved to make this a successful audit. So with 15B, I do ask that you approve and accept the audit ending June 30th, 2018.
Great. Any final questions or comments for Crystal before we go to motion? All right. Motion to approve? Okay, second? Second. All right, all in favor, please say aye. 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 Passes 5 plus 1 to 0. All right, thank you. All right, item 15C, approve Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board policy updates and adopt the proposed revisions as recommended by the California School Boards Association. Jane.
Okay, so we have policies change on a rolling and regular basis, and we put them together as the California School Boards Association advises us, and we bring them to the governing board so that our policies are continually in line with federal and state and local laws. And occasionally we have a board policy that truly reflects local. Most of the time it's federal or state, but sometimes local. And I bring you one of those this evening. And in fact, I don't bring you so much the board policy. It's the very rare moment that I bring on an administrative regulation. So board policy is what the governing board, all of you, approve. Once that's been approved, my job as superintendent is to create an administrative regulation which says, how are we going to enact this policy throughout the schools? So the environmental policy has been modified by CSBA to reflect things about water levels and all the federal work. We had here within the district an incident last year that caused us to reflect and realize that our administrative regulations were not sufficient for all of the things which is happening through the district, in particular with mold. So we rewrote our administrative regulation. We posted it for comment to make sure that our public had a chance to give us feedback. I put a letter out with it. It had my direct email for response. I am pleased to tell you that, it was posted since last December, so it's been out for about 4.5 weeks. I have not received any comments, so I believe that we are answering, and I asked Mr. Porcel, and he also has not received any. So I believe we are answering the need of the public with the new environmental regulation and specifically the administrative regulation. So I'm not happy that we had the incident, but I am happy that our board policy and our administrative regulations have strengthened so that we now have clarity in our actions going forward. On top of that, we have transfers, and so the transfer regulations were based on the old academic performance index, which we haven't used in years now, and so they finally caught up and said, we should delete that language that has to do with the law that doesn't exist anymore. So it did. And then in school health services, there's API, again, the Healthy Start programs, there's a lot of obsolete federal programs, and they now have new names. So we've updated the policy so that the correct and new names are in place and not the old names. And so it talks about Medi-Cal, and it also talks about what we can reimburse, what we can't reimburse under the new law. So again, we're updating for federal and state law here. And then suspension and expulsion. Again, the new law that prohibits expulsion of a child in a preschool program. I can't even understand how you expel a preschooler, but now it's formal. I mean, it's not something a Cabrillo, it's such a foreign concept to us, but it's there. And it also talks about if we have a firearm, and we have a student who arrives with a firearm, which, knock on wood, we don't have, what type of data collection has to be there. So there's some more regulation for us that should we be under this particular act heading for expulsion, the data we're required to collect on the firearms as they come in. And it also has the rules on expulsion. There are these 0 tolerances. So you must expel if. And they change over time. And so also updated are the 0 tolerances that you must recommend expulsion if. So they updated and brought those also into the new law. And finally, we have the updated board policy. This is a combination of both the California School Boards Association and also Dr. Wade, who is recognized as actually one of the experts in the area of 504. And she contributed to this as well. And so between the two of them, I think we have an outstanding board policy and administrative reg guiding us. 504s are tricky business. They are important, they protect our students, but how we do them is not as clear as an IEP when we're in special ed. So I think this policy really gives us a firm backbone now to exactly how we should do these things and exactly what we should be thinking about as we do these things. And that's important for our students. So thank you, Dr. Wade, for bringing this forward and having it here for our policies.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? No? Okay, then we'll move on. We have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, please say aye. 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 Okay, passes 5 + 1 to 0. Okay, so that brings us to item 16, future board agenda items, the 2019 Science Fair finalists recognition from last night's event, receiving the report on local control accountability plan goal 1 and 2 update, Receiving the report on school plan for student achievement for Cunha Intermediate School would be the final one in that series. Discuss a construction update report. Approving the school plan for student achievement for Cunha Intermediate School. And finally, approving the CUSD governing board policy updates and adopting proposed revisions as recommended by CSBA. Item 17, future events, dates, and requests. Today is the spelling bee at Kings Mountain. January 23rd, we have immersion program mandatory meeting at Hatch. January 22nd, new student registration begins. On 25th is Special Olympics basketball at Half Moon Bay High School. Yeah.
I just
Correction?
they correct that date. It's now on Monday, February 4th.
Yes. Item 17D is February 4th, Special Olympics basketball. Thanks. January 28th is the Hatch Heal program graduation. January 20th, also the college-bound student-athlete parent meeting at Half Moon Bay High School. 29th, it's a busy month. 29th, 8th grade parent night at Half Moon Bay High School. January 30th, whole school spirit assembly at Half Moon Bay High School. February 1st, sibling open enrollment lottery. February 5th, Big Lift collaborative meeting. Also February 5th, Chamber Education Committee meeting. February 9th, Half Moon Bay High School Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And February 13th, the regular governing board meeting where we reconvene. Item 18, returning to closed session if necessary. It is not, so we shall not. And item 19, adjourning the meeting. We are at 8:37, 8:38. We will adjourn. So. Oh, sorry, that's right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 5 to 1, 5 plus 1 to 0. Thank you, everybody.